what are your biggest learnings over the last 4 years as a leader in game dev?
I've realized that, when you and I first started doing this, we were talking about, we had a lot of experiences professionally that led us to develop this concept called incentives in a very practical sense and start teaching it to people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that has only like entrenched further and further and further in my mind as like an incredibly important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I to the point where it's like now gone back out into other areas of my life and the way I view the world, to be like a very important concept. Like I think that anytime you have human beings working together in groups, and especially if the output of those relationships is a part of the quality of the product, incentives is super important.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like probably one of the most important things, and I don't see leaders accurately curating incentives or thinking about what incentives they want to set. And I think I see a lot of leaders in the games industry operating under really shitty incentives. Um,
Mm-hmm.
an example of this is like, we are an industry that's full of people who show up late, full of people who are just scatterbrained and can't focus, full of people who are just constantly trying to make a task list for everything, full of people. And again, this is like we're this is all stuff that we do that's focused on maintaining the bureaucratic machine at our organizations. And the reason we do that stuff is because that's the stuff that we do that gets us rewarded. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
it is high time that we really start challenging that. Not because organizations don't need rules, not because people don't need frameworks to work within. I'm not against that stuff. I'm not against process. I do process for a living. I am sick and tired of talking to leaders in game dev who their only preoccupation is that. Like they're so
Mm-hmm.
separated from anything meaningful when it comes to product development or servicing the customers or developing a meaningful strategy for their people or being plugged into the attitudes of the people on the ground doing the work or what their struggles are or what their blockers are or like the last time they actually employed a solution, actually made a change on their team that made a material difference in the reality that the workers were working in. None of that. It's all just hot air and nonsense 90% of the time. And it's frustrating for me. And I thought that when as a consultant and working with all these different game studios that I would get a more like well-rounded take, and perhaps my frustration with that was localized to some of the few experiences I had, and that if I got a more broad perspective that I'd be like, you are just looking at some local but no, it's doubled
It's
down,
everywhere.
tripled down, quadrupled down. And in
Right. Yeah.
fact, the more studios I worked with, the more I realized that most game developers are under the yoke worse than I could have ever imagined when it comes to that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. So it's like, I mean, I swear, I feel like half of these studios are in such bureaucratic hell that if they just ripped away all of their process, if they just ripped away all the stupid meetings and all the like political wheeling and dealing and the emails that are way too long and all the excess documentation, if they just flushed it all, if you could just send a great flood to just go through their corporate headquarters and wash it all away so everyone was forced to start from scratch, that 6 months later they would have a better system than they have now, just by the
Mm-hmm.
necessity of having to rebuild it from scratch. Like that's how bad
Mm-hmm.
it is. Like the people are sailing around these creaky wooden ships that are like 150 years old is what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody hates it too. Like nobody's excited about it. Nobody's like, this is really great. Like so
Yeah.
I see that, and um that was something for me that was a wake up call. It was like, wow, okay, industry wide, we have some serious um, challenges we need to deal with and work with. And I think we don't have the training or the skills really get ourselves out of that situation. And by the way, that's not unique to games. That's how corporate America is in general. But
Yeah.
like I think again, the rest of corporate America is lucky enough that their entire industry doesn't have a secular change every 3 years like ours does.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they don't get the pain of that legacy model doesn't affect them as much, right? Like if you're in banking, it's like you've been doing the same shit for 50 years. It's like, has it changed
Yeah.
that much, you know? But in games,
Right.
it's like there's 4 college students like somewhere in a basement that are waiting to steal your lunch, you know? It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I just also see that games sit in that space of we compete for your time as an entertainment medium. Like we're
mhm.
distraction or we're story or we're something like that. And it is so complex and has so many different disciplines. Like the gap between, app development and, making a game, it's huge. It's
Mhm.
huge. I'm not saying app development is easy, but I'm just saying like making games is insanely difficult, and I think this actually ties back into that first thing you were talking about where the cracks are showing.
Yeah.
The basically the bureaucracy and the process and the focus and the poor incentives are being exposed for what they are. This isn't helping us, and in fact in many cases it's hurting us up and down the organization. What else? What other major learnings?
One is that I think this is partially as an entrepreneur, but um, also relevant. Being having been a consultant for the last 4 or 5 years, um, you have to have a bias. There's so many reasons why you have to have a bias towards action.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would take it a step further to be a bias towards making changes, positive
Mm-hmm.
changes. Um, one of the things that's a difficult line that you and I have ridden is that we understand a lot of the time that the problem with that game studios are having is that they lack the necessary skills or education on a key issue. So we react by teaching them about the
Mm-hmm.
concept or how to employ the concept. But at the same time, cynicism starts building every single day the moment you maintain a stance as a teacher or an advisor. And we're seeing this broadly speaking across all of corporate America, in that cynicism about the idea of consultants is rising at an unprecedented level that I've never seen in my life. Like when I was a kid, there was very few things that felt like they were higher prestige than being a consultant. Now,
Mm.
I feel like a lot of people associate the idea of being a consultant with being some asshole talking head who doesn't actually do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like the old adage, like, or the old phrase, those who can't do teach. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's how people feel a lot about consultants right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether you agree with that or feel similarly is beside the point. The point I am trying to make is that whatever you're doing, if you're not making your customer's life better every single day in material terms, it doesn't matter what you have to say. Um, and I think I'm going to take that with me moving forward, which is like, even if I were to go as far as to say, I'm going to make 3 changes on your team that are going to help you that have nothing to do with the thing I'm trying to teach you, just so you know that I'm a credible resource that you can trust,
Mm-hmm.
that's worth something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that we have this dichotomy in our industry between the folks who are like seen as like the doers, the ones who like move things forward, and so often those folks lack efficacy. They're just like they're they're literally like John Deere trucks with like a snowplow in front of them, just moving snow around. And it's the efficacy is so low that we don't even care how much snow it is. We don't know how much snow it is. We don't care where the snow is going. We don't care if all we're doing is moving the snow back and forth from the left bank to the right bank. As long as there are a lot of trucks moving around a lot of snow, we feel like stuff's going. And we really value those people. Those people at game companies are more valuable than ever right now. Those people that can just move it, the get shit done people, right? And
Yeah.
then on the other hand, we have the like dashiki wearing philosophers who might have a better idea about how we can do things, but they don't do anything. They just talk. And so
Hmm.
we're really annoyed by them because they might have good ideas that we're willing to entertain for a while, but like at some point we need to get back to work, and that person immediately becomes useless in our eyes the moment we need to get back to work. And so I hate that dichotomy. I've always been bothered by like the leaders being lumped in one category or another. Like the
Hmm.
idea of somebody bridging both of those effectively is almost like a unicorn thing that doesn't really exist. Like I see most leaders seemingly lumped into one category or another. And I think that that's
Yeah.
a terrible shame and a miss. And I think that it's both of those things are bad. And I think in games in particular, both of those things are worse. Like in again, back to what I was saying. In banking, you can plow snow and make it by pretty effectively because not like you have it's pretty high chances that moving snow, the snow is going to end up in the right place because we've been doing that exercise for 50 years. We know how it's done. But in this world, what good looks like is a moving target. Like, and so like just to take a snowplow approach to work, you're wasting your time.
Hmm.
And like 95% of the studios I've ever spoken to lack a cohesive product vision, or if they're lucky enough to have a cohesive product vision, a lot of times the team doesn't even really understand what it is because it hasn't been
Hmm.
effectively communicated or disseminated. You're dead in the water. Like you can hire all the snowplowers in the world, but you're not going anywhere. And like so there's we need to combine both of those things. We need leaders that have like the creativity and the ingenuity and the forward thinking capability to dance with the chaos and the moving target nature of our industry as well, that can bounce between like what's the next thing, what's the right thing, like that I can discern what a good solution is from a bad solution, and then the second I reach my decision I try it, and then I go back and I discern again, and then I try it, and then I go back again and again, and I discern and I try, I discern and then I try, like, and not to get stuck in one stance, either stance, for too long, because until we can breed more of those leaders, we'll never be able to like gracefully tackle the challenges in our industry. Um, I just don't see it happening. Like I think the snowplow folks want some kind of they want this to be some programmatic solution. Like put these five inputs into these five variables and out comes good game. And I'm like, you're never gonna get that ever. And then the philosophy folks are like, and I worry that maybe you and I fall into this trap sometimes where it's just like, if everybody just did these things and obviously these ideas are better, and it's like, okay, great. It's like, is that a workable solution? I think it is, but it's like I feel the frustration from the snowplow folks about that.